Hello and welcome to Dice and Demons. I'm Emma, and in this video I'm going to be answering a whole bunch of questions I got from you guys to celebrate my 5,000 subscribers here on YouTube. First of all, of course, thank you so much to everyone who is subscribing to the channel. It means the world to me, and it is, really motivating for me to see that so many people are actually interested in watching me splashing paint on some models. So yeah, I hugely appreciate that. So I asked all of you to come up with some questions, something you'd like me to answer, particularly stuff that I don't typically answer in my tutorial videos and other videos. And I got a whole lot of really nice questions. So yeah, I have them all printed out on a big sheet here. So there were quite a lot of questions, and I'm looking forward to answering them. So I'll just be taking them from the top. I haven't sort of categorized them or anything. Perhaps I should, but I haven't. So I'm just going to be answering all the questions that I got, and yeah, we'll see where that takes us. So the first question I got was, can you elaborate a bit more about your style of painting, inspirations, how did you come up with it, the details, how long it takes, and what brushes works best with it, etc. So yeah, that's a big question, and the style of painting it's not something that I just came up with because I saw someone else do something like that, or because I watched a particular artist or a style of painting or anything. It was just sort of something that happened, and it had really more to do with the tools I was using than sort of a conscious effort or a conscious decision to go that way. So the thing is, I was starting my orc army for 40k, and the first model I painted was this one, Gaskell himself. And so I had decided that I wanted to use contrast paints for it. The contrast paints had just come out, and I thought it looked like a fun way of painting, and perhaps a little bit more quick, and also a way of getting different paints on the models, particularly like painting yellow, for instance. That can be a notoriously difficult color to paint with. So I thought, why not try out the yellow contrast paint and see where that goes. And so I put it on the big armor plates on Gaskell. So he has some relatively large armor plates, like here on his shoulder, for instance. Doesn't really want to focus on it much. And so I just put on the contrast paints, and it's a little bit tricky to see here, but it did not. I mean, it doesn't like contrast paint is not particularly well suited for flat surfaces such as this. So it was a little bit splotchy and uneven, and I thought, that was not exactly what I was going for. But on the other hand, I didn't want to repaint it. I just so I thought, why not just lean into it more, put on some more texture on the surface to make it look like it was sort of the point of the whole color scheme, that it was uneven. And so I decided, well, if I wanted to look to accentuate the splotchiness almost, why not put on some orange in sort of shadows, and why not put on some lighter yellow for highlights. And then I just thought, well, what might look even more uneven, sort of scratch marks almost on the armor. And so that's where the cross-hatching came from. I was thinking about scratch marks, and then it sort of turned into its own thing from there. So yeah, that was where the idea came for that type of painting, really. It also says how long does it take, and I don't really know. It takes quite a while. I'm not gonna lie, this is not the fastest way of painting ever. So it takes a while, but I don't mind because I enjoy it. So I'd say an orc boy is perhaps, I don't know, a couple of hours, 3-4 hours, something like that. And bigger models are somewhere between 50 to 80 hours, roughly. I don't know. I don't time myself. I tried doing it once, and it completely took the joy out of it for me because I felt like I had to hurry. So I don't really know exactly how long it takes. As for brushes, I use I use some brushes from Winsor & Newton, and I also use the Gold series from Greenstuff World. I like those brushes a lot. I know that, and I even use them for metallics and stuff. I know you're not supposed to use natural hair brushes for that kind of work because it is a bit rough on the brushes, but I spent so much time painting that I have decided I'm willing to spend the money it takes to paint with tools I like working with. So yeah. Okay, so the next question is, what was your first introduction to mini painting? What models and what was your first army? Okay, so when I was in high school, I had a friend whose brother played Warhammer, and we had been looking a little bit at his models, and we thought it looked really cool, and we actually even bought some models ourselves. I bought some, this was when the old Warhammer Fantasy was still around, and I bought some models for the Dark Elves, and I painted, I don't know, 5 or something like that. It never really got any further than that. Then we got sort of caught up in being teenagers and stuff, and yeah. So, but I knew Warhammer existed, and I was sort of Warhammer curious. And so, about 5 years ago, there was a shop that opened in my local city, and I went in there with my daughter and asked, "So, what's going on? What's the Warhammer stuff? Can you give us an introduction?" And we got this really nice introduction to Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and my eyes were immediately caught by the Seraphon army, and I think we spent 45 minutes in the shop just getting an introduction. And the shop owner, who's now a friend of mine, told me about their weekly hobby nights and stuff, and I thought it sounded really cool. So I went home not buying anything, showing an enormous amount of self-restraint. So I did, because I decided I wanted to do a little bit of research before just jumping in. And yeah, I did a lot of Googling in the next couple of days, but very soon after I bought the Start Collecting box for Seraphon, and then I haven't really stopped painting since. So Seraphon was my first real army for Warhammer. So what are some life hack, cheap, non-wargaming products you use every day? I'm not sure I use it every day, but one of the best ones is definitely the hack of using makeup brushes for dry brushing. They are just excellent for it, and you can get them fairly cheap, and they don't have to be like amazing quality or anything, because I mean, dry brushing is really hard on your brushes anyway, so there's no need to go for really high quality brushes. So yeah, makeup brushes. I don't think I've ever used a makeup brush for actual makeup, but I've used it a ton for dry brushing. Yes. And the next question is, how long have you been painting now, and about how many hours a week do you get or try to paint? So I have been painting Warhammer minis for about 5 years now. As I said, when the shop opened, it was about 5 years ago now. And I don't really know how many hours a week I paint, and I don't have a set amount I try to paint at all. It's not like I feel like I have to paint every single day, or at least 10 hours a week or something. But I do spend a lot of time painting. I would say perhaps on a regular week, somewhere along the lines of 20 hours of painting or something like that. I mean, it depends. Some weeks are really busy, and some weeks are, some weeks I just have lots and lots of time. So it depends. What's your top 5 favorite minis and paints? I don't know if I have top 5 minis like listed in my head. And it also depends on whether it's for, painting them, like I want to paint them, or just I like the look of them. I definitely like the big dragons that GW came out with. Was it last year, the year before? Like the really big Krundas, and I can't remember the name of the other guy. That's a really cool model. I like that a lot. Generally, I also really like the orc models for 40k, just because they're so much fun. Like the Death Dread, it's a silly and also quite old model, I think now, but it's just so orky, which is cool. I also really like a lot of the Seraphon range, not the old stuff that's still in resin. But the newer stuff and the big dinos, they're just perfect for me. I also think there are a lot of independent, smaller companies that make really, really cool stuff. I mean, some of it is just really fun, and some of it's really beautiful, and some of them are, you know, historical minis. There's so much out there, and I more or less want to paint it all. But even with, as I said, about 20 hours a week, if it takes me 80 hours to paint a big mini, that's just one mini a month. So I can't paint them all, but I would love to if I could. And also top 5 paints, I would say I really like the contrast paints, because they just work. They're so quick, you know. You get a base color down really quick, and it covers in one go, which I really like. I also really like the neon paints that Huge Miniatures sent me. They look like this. I really like these paints. I use them in almost every single painting project these days, so they're really cool as well. But again, there are so many great companies and so many great variations of color out there, and I haven't by no means tried all of them, so I can't give you sort of a comprehensive list of which paints are the absolute best. So next up, what inspires your color schemes? What reference material do you use? I don't really use reference materials. It's not like I sit down and look at pictures of I don't know, flowers or birds or lizards or anything. I could do that, but yeah, I don't really go there. I just sort of well, what inspires my color scheme? Well, basically I just pick a primary color I want to use. So I think, for instance, for my Chaos Space Marines, I was like, I want something that's just really, really pink. So pink was just the main color, and I wanted to see how can I use the most pink on this army. And then when I had put all the pink colors in, I decided, okay, where do I want to go next? I want something that works well with the pink, and then I put in some bluish tones. And then I thought it would also be nice if I had something that contrasted a little bit with the pink, and so I put in some neon green as well. So, but it usually just starts there. I start with one color I really like, and then I work from there, basically. Do you paint miniatures that aren't Warhammer GW, and if so, what's your favorite? I do. I mainly paint GW models, and that is for 2 reasons. One of them being that I like working with plastic models instead of, let's say, resin or metal models, and I also like stuff that you can build and that you don't have to build all the way. You can paint them in sub-assemblies, because that works best with the way I paint. I just get so frustrated if it all is like one resin blob and there are so many nooks and crannies you can't really reach. So that's why I don't paint more, let's say, 3D printed models, for instance. I do have 3D printed models, and some of them are really nice, and some of them I really enjoyed painting, but mainly it's GW models. I also do paint other stuff. I have, this is my, this is for Warhammer still, but it's not a GW model. It's, it won't really focus on it. Yeah, okay, so the colors are not quite right here in the video, but this is my Squigosaur for my Orc army, and I just really liked it because it has, I mean, it's sort of an anglerfish. How cool is that? And this is from a company that's called Wargames Crew, and they didn't send me any of the stuff. I just bought it, you know. So no hidden advertisement or anything. But I think Wargames Crew makes some really cool Orc models, and they are cast in resin, and I think the quality is really nice. So yeah, another reason why I mainly paint well, not strictly GW models, but at least Warhammer models, is because I paint to play. Every time, almost not 100%, but 99% of the models I paint because I imagine that at some point I am going to be using them on a tabletop and play games with them. And so it just makes sense for me to paint models that will actually work in a Warhammer army. Then I got a question: what is your best/worst hobby experience? So my best hobby experience, I don't know. It depends, because I both have some really nice experiences, with just being in the club and being in the game store and playing games with my friends and sitting down and painting. And, I've made a lot of really nice, I've met a lot of really nice and cool people through the hobby, which I really appreciate, and met some, made some friends and stuff, and I also appreciate that a lot. Another cool experience was having my orc army featured on the Warhammer community page. That was also really, that was amazing, definitely. So my worst hobby experience, however, that is really easy to answer. My worst hobby experience ever was when I drove over my first Warhammer army in my car. And that probably demands a bit of an explanation. It wasn't on purpose. It was an accident. It sounds really silly. It was an accident, but I had my Seraphon army, the first army I bought, and I had painted the entire army. I had 2,000 points of painted Seraphon, and I had gone to a hobby store to play, and it was late, and it was in the winter, and it was just, really pitch black out there. And so I was, I had all my stuff in, I had the books in bags, and I had all the models in boxes with those little sort of foam, the foam blobs or whatever that you put in like packaging foam. And I had all my models in a ton of boxes with that packaging foam. And I just had so much stuff, and I had other stuff in the car as well. And so I was just standing around and trying to get it all in the car. And then I got in the car and I drove, and it just felt so weird. The car felt weird, and I thought I had a flat tire or something. And so I parked the car again. I had driven about, 100 meters or something. And I parked the car, and I got out, and I could just see in the light from the street lights, I could just see that there was packaging foam all over the road. And I was like, no, this did not just happen, but it did. And I couldn't see the models anywhere. I didn't know where they were, and so and I was tired, and it was late, and it was dark, and I was horrified that I had just destroyed my entire army. I just lost my entire army, and it was just finished, and I had played my very first game with my entire Seraphon army. So yeah, I was, as you can probably imagine, not happy. And I couldn't see the models anywhere, and I was looking, and I was frantic, and then I had got down on my knees, and I could see the entire big bag with most of my models in it underneath the car. And I was like, oh, you didn't do that. But I did. And so I had to get them out from underneath the car, but they had sort of lodged themselves. They were stuck underneath the car, and they had been dragged those 100 meters across the road. And so I had to reach down and pull out this bag from under the car. It was really hard because it was just really stuck. And, as I said, packaging foam everywhere, and I couldn't see anything because it was dark, so I didn't know if all the models were there, and I didn't know how damaged they were, and I was just so upset. And so I just had to put them in the car and drive home, and I don't know if I was, I think I was definitely on the verge of crying if I wasn't crying, because I just thought, oh, so many hours, so much work, and I was just so happy having accomplished, a finished army, basically. But then when I got home and got it all unpacked, it turned out that I think the ancient ones, the Seraphon gods, they had been watching over me, because I think I had about 8 broken spears and a couple of cavalry units where the riders had come off and stuff, and some scraped paint on a couple of them. But I think in about 2 hours I had it all fixed up, and no one could see that it had happened. So yeah, I managed actually to drive over my entire army and not totally wrecking it. It's a silly story, I don't know, but that was the worst hobby experience, definitely. So I also got a question: what's a color/shade you wish you had more use for? And that I do know. I really wish I had more use for this. It's Luxion Purple. It's one of the contrast paints from Citadel, and it's such a nice, rich purple color. And I have been not painting anything in purple for a long time because I didn't really like the purple colors that came out with the first batch of the contrast paints. And now I really like this one, and I don't really use it a lot. And I've used it a couple of times for smaller things, but I haven't used it as a sort of main color in a big project, which I would really like at some point. Then I also got a question, where did you get such a unique style from? Which I think is more or less the first question I also answered. And do you have any other hobbies that helped you get a good sense of color usage? What's the thing you get most from the hobby? Okay, so if I have any other hobbies that help me get a good sense of color, I would say that before I went into Warhammer, I have also been doing a lot of drawing and painting, you know, ordinary 2D painting and drawing and painting like portraits and stuff. So I have been creative my whole life. So that might be where it comes from. And what's the thing you get most from the hobby? And I would just say the hobby is just such a nice way for me to relax, and also it makes me go out and be social. I try to go out 2 times a week for hobby stuff. I go to the store once a week, and I go to my hobby club once a week, either to play or to paint, which is really nice because I don't have a job or anything. So if I did not have that, I would just more or less stay at home all the time. So this is definitely one of the things that I really, really appreciate about the hobby. What model in your collection is your most cherished one, and what is your own favorite paint job? The most cherished model in my collection, I don't know if I have one that is my most cherished, but I do have some that I think are more fun than others, and this is one of them. So it's a bit of a more humble paint job. It's a Storm Boy, but as you can see, I put it on a piece of clear plastic on the base and also on the model, which means it goes boing. And it's silly, and it's not my favorite paint job, but it's definitely one of my favorite models to put on the tabletop, just because it does this. So every time you move this unit, they look completely silly. I love that. And what's your own favorite paint job? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of the bigger models probably, like painting the. I relatively recently finished a big knight, for instance. That was really cool. I also have painted, bigger stuff for my Chaos Space Marines, like the Mauler Fiend and stuff, and bigger models for my Orcs army and my Seraph and Dinos and stuff. So yeah, I generally like to paint big models. Yeah. So another question is, I'd like to ask you if you have a dream project you'd love to do, whether it currently exists or not. I do, and it has actually nothing to do with painting models as such. It's more of a terrain project. I really want to build at some point an entire fantasy village, just, an entire fantasy village, so that you would almost have a small world that you could imagine yourself living in, and walking through the streets and drawing water from the well and visiting the inn and all sorts of things like that. And then with a sort of fantasy vibe, that would be really cool. And I would like to make it in sort of a Warhammer appropriate scale, because that is also the scale I think is most fun to build terrain for. So I have another question here. You have a totally unique way to work with colors. Is that something you taught yourself over time, or do you have a background in the arts or some other creative field? I don't have a formal art education or anything. I don't have any education in arts or anything at all. So it has been self-taught, but I think, as I said, I've always been painting and drawing, so it's always something I have been interested in, and I have also been really interested in art. Not, yeah, it sounds, I mean, I should say I really love modern art because it's so cool, but I have always loved art from the Renaissance. And so when I was about from the age 10 to 12 or something, one of the things I wished for birthdays and Christmases and stuff were books about Renaissance art. So I have studied that intensely, you know, sat and looked, you know, at all the details and some of the big masterpieces from that time. I'm also really much into ancient Egypt, and I have also always loved their art. You know, the murals they have painted on in the tombs, and some like the statues and what they did with gold and precious stones and stuff. And I just like their. I mean, obviously the murals have faded over time, but you still get the sense of those nice, clean, bright colors that they used. There's just something about the sort of stylistic approach to art that I really enjoy. Do you have any tabletop RPGs or board games you really like? I have never played a tabletop role-playing game ever. I have a friend who is she's setting up a role-playing like a role-playing team. We're going to start at some point. I don't really know when, and I really look forward to it because I've never played it. I have played a ton of RPGs on the computer, but never played it in real life. Board games, however, I play a lot. I particularly play board games with my mom, actually, and we just started recently playing a game called Wingspan. It's about birds and resource management, and it sounds a little bit silly, but it's actually a really cool game. So yeah, definitely, definitely something that I think you should try out if you enjoy board games at all. What are your favorite color paints to work with, and which ones do you find the most difficult? So by far the easiest I think working with is stuff like contrast paints, just because, as I said, they go on quickly, and you have just a nice coat of paint in one go. You don't have to go over something like 2 or 3 times in order for it to cover the surface. And the most difficult ones are probably for me metal paints. I don't particularly enjoy working with metals, and which is probably also why if you take a closer look at some of my paint jobs, I can spend a ton of time on the colored armor panels, for instance, doing cross-hatching or doing the little shades that sort of look like stained glass windows and stuff. And if you look at the metals, it's usually like I've put metal paint on it, I have given it some kind of wash or shade, and then I just quickly highlighted it with another metal color, and that's it. I don't enjoy painting metals, so I just do them as quickly as possible. Yeah, so that's it. So that was the last question I got. I tried to I had asked people to come up with questions on different platforms. So if I have missed your question, I'm really sorry. I tried to find all of them, but if I somehow missed it, please ask me again, and I can just do another one of these at some point. So yeah, I hope that this was a little bit entertaining, or at least a bit interesting to you. And if you have other questions, you are also of course welcome to ask me in the comments, and I can just do another Q&A at some point. So yeah, thank you so much again for the 5,000 subscribers, and I hope that if you are not already one of them, that you will consider subscribing to the channel and perhaps liking this video and stuff. And if you want to stay up to date on my painting projects, you can also follow me as Dyson Demons on Twitter and Instagram. So thank you so much for watching this one, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!